Hi, you're listening to Boggy Talk, Faith Conversations in the Mud, a resource of Church on Bayshore. Boggy Talk is recorded on Boggy Bayou in Niceville, Florida, and is hosted by Justin Wyatt and James Ross, pastors at Church on Bayshore. We typically want every matter of faith and life to have crystal clear answers, but it isn't always that easy. This podcast digs in to help Christians think with a kingdom mentality about topics that sometimes get muddy and bog us down. So let's dive in.
Hey, and welcome to Boggy Talk. We are so thankful that you have joined us for this very special edition of Boggy Talk. Boggy Mamas. No, I'm just kidding.
Boggy Mamas.
Yeah, Boggy Mamas. No, we are celebrating Mother's Day week, and we have two incredible moms here who are going to join us, or who are joining us, and
they're coming.
They are
we
already
have two moms here. Two incredible moms are about to join us.
Oh, but before we get started, I'm joined by faithful co-host James Ross, who's lead pastor here at Church on Bayshore. You doing all right, man?
I'm great, Justin, especially since Kay and Gail are with us here today.
Yes, and we're going to introduce them in just a second. But first, I want to ask you, what? No, it's okay. It's okay, jump. That's okay. But what do you have planned for Mother's Day for the special ladies in your life?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
And I don't want to reveal the answer because it might reveal a secret
It's
too
a
soon.
Secret.
That's right. Not because I don't have anything planned yet.
It's also a secret to you.
That's right.
Yeah. Well,
Mother's Day is hard.
Yes.
Because you have your mama and my wife.
Yes.
Because my kids aren't,
it's not on the
I
radar
love them,
yet.
but they're sweet gestures. Chrissy's like, oh, that's sweet, but give me something good.
Yeah, like actually do something because I love these cards, but I get those every day from school.
That's right.
Last year, we were like 2 months into COVID and, being at home a lot. And Christy's like, what I would love for Mother's Day is for you just to take the kids out of the house.
Yes.
All day. And so we did.
That's good.
She's like, I don't want to go anywhere. I just want to be home without anyone else.
Yeah,
so
for sure.
We'll probably repeat that again.
That's a good philosophy.
Yeah. So, as we said, we are joined by two incredible moms. They are not coming. They are already here. We have Kay Barrett and Yael Chastain. Sorry, I'll say your name correctly. Yael Chastain, right? And they are going to share some wisdom. So I want you guys, ladies, just introduce yourselves. Tell us about you, your family, your kids. Go ahead. Why don't you start us, Gail?
I'm Gail Chastain. My husband's David. We've been married 55 years.
Wow, 55 years.
Doesn't
Wow.
that sound like a lot?
And it's David. That's 55 years. Wow.
You are a saint.
We have 4 children, 1 son and 3 daughters, and we have 10 grandchildren.
Wow.
And we love them. They're the joy of our life.
The grandchildren, not the children, right? The grandchildren.
No, all of them. We love them. Absolutely. We just, we're so proud of our family. And
Do they live here? Where are they?
We have a daughter that lives here and 2 of the grandchildren. We have a daughter who lives in Orlando, and she has 3 children, her and her husband, and a son that lives in Daytona. Ormond Beach actually is the town. And we have a daughter in Montana that has 2 grandchildren. Oh, our son has 3.
Wow.
So,
all over.
Yes, all over. So this year has been a little bit tough to get together, but we've done our best. We still wanted to see those in Montana, but thank goodness for Zoom.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I'm married to Roger. We've been married for 34 years. We have
Only 34.
only 34. Yeah, we still got a ways to go to keep up with these guys. Yeah. We have 2 sons and a daughter-in-law and 2 grandsons and a little granddaughter on the way.
All right.
And they all live in Houston.
All right.
Mhm.
All of them in Houston.
All
That's
of them
right.
in Houston. Yeah.
Well, that's not too far, but it is too far at
yeah.
the same time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, we want to ask you ladies some questions so you could share some wisdom that you've learned along the way. I think it's important for us to learn from people who have experience and wisdom, not just experience, but good experience and who are wise.
We were thinking about telling everyone how to be a good mom.
Right.
But we decided maybe we should have actual moms do that.
Whose kids are grown.
Yes.
Turned out all right.
Although hearing y'all's advice, might be interesting.
Might be interesting.
Right.
That's right.
Yeah, you don't want to hear my advice on being a mom at all. But so we're just going to dive right into some questions and just let you share. So the first question is this: really, as you began motherhood, what influenced you?
Well, okay. Well, of course, my mom and my mother-in-law were great sources of wisdom and just practical knowledge on things. And actually, it was people at our church too, because we were new here in the community. We didn't know that many people. And we had a Tuesday morning ladies Bible study. And buddy, those ladies were they were a few steps ahead of me in the mothering game. And they were such a support and wisdom along the way. And we just kind of learned together too.
That's good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh, definitely my mother.
Yeah.
And my mother-in-law. My mother-in-law has 8 children.
Wow.
And, well, she has passed away, but she was really instrumental in helping me and showing me patience and showing me how to be patient.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And so did you guys live near your parents when you became moms?
No, because we were in the military.
Gotcha.
So we were traveling all the time.
You guys have been
and-
everywhere. I mean, all over the
and,
place, right?
Yeah, we
Yeah.
started here. We started in Indiana. We went to Texas. Then we went to Arizona. Then we went to Florida. Then he went overseas to Vietnam. He came back. We went to California, then to Alabama, then North Carolina, then down. So
Been everywhere.
But really, the military wives, they were a big help. I think probably to me more because the husbands were gone a lot. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. I think that's something that a lot of people can relate to because in this community, we have a lot of families parenting without their families nearby. And we have some who are, of course. And I think that's an added factor in parenting when you don't have the proximity. And for you at that time, there wasn't Zoom and there wasn't FaceTime.
No.
So there was a lot more distance. I think you'll have some things to share about that as we go along. So as you everyone thinks they've got it figured out before they become parents. I remember thinking when I'm a parent, I'll never do that. I'll never say that. And then I'm like, I just said that. So going into motherhood, what did you find most surprising?
How much patience you need.
What do you mean? I thought your children were perfect. You don't need that with your grandchildren. They are perfect. But
and prayer. Patience and prayer because they do things that you don't know how to deal with. So you have to pray about it and try to work through it. I was so thankful for the other military wives when we started out because they were my family. They had to be my family because he was gone and our parents weren't there. So
Kay, what about you? What surprised you? Think back when you became a mom. What surprised you?
Well, it wasn't like it is on TV. With all those little perfect children, and
They never cry.
They never cry, and they go play, and you just go about your life, and just the way the responsibility and how I felt like I just didn't know what I was doing. I thought, I was a nurse. I thought, I know what I'm doing here. I can do this. And I had no idea what I'm doing. And I remember just being afraid I was going to mess things up. I was going to mess these children up. And my children might say, well, Mom, you did. No, but it is, I think that everything was different than I thought it was going to be. Nobody ever slept, everybody cried, including the mom. It was just really different. But then you get into a rhythm, and it gets better. But
Now,
And
how
by a
far-
rhythm, you mean your kids get out of the preschool stage, right? Is that what you mean?
that's a whole nother rhythm. That's a whole nother.
Because that period is just so tiring, when they're preschoolers. Oof.
Yeah,
Physically
and then they
exhausting.
become teenagers. And
that's emotionally,
that's,
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mhm.
That's a
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw a meme actually today, and it said, it was like somebody making like a rolling eyes face. It was like the expression I make when I hear people say parenting will be easier when my kids get older. It's like, yeah, it's even when they're adults.
It's just different.
The
It's just different.
logistics too, right? It's
Yeah.
just wild. So you kind of talked about how you learned and what you were surprised about, but as you went through those different cycles in life, how did you keep learning? How did you stay fresh? How did you, I don't know, whatever way to say that.
How did you grow?
Yeah, how did you
and
grow as a mom?
flourish as a mom?
There you go. That's a good word.
Yeah.
Flourish.
Flourish. That's a mom word,
Yeah.
isn't it?
And what lessons did you learn, I guess?
Yeah.
A lot of prayer. I neglected to mention when you said the surprises. My husband said the one surprise was we had twins. It's a surprise,
Yeah.
and that is a lot of work, and that is something that you can't prepare for because you having two that are crying at the same time. And of course, he was gone.
Yeah.
He took a month off to be there when they were born, and they didn't come during that time because everybody said would come early. Everybody said twins would come early. So he waited the whole time. They didn't come. The day he left, I went into labor that afternoon.
Oh, my goodness.
But my mother was there. But
Wow.
So, anyway, that was I just
Yeah, I got
neglect.
nothing.
I just want to say that on the
That's
surprise part.
definitely a big
Surprise. Yep. Sorry. Now I've completely forgot the question.
So how did you continue to grow, and maybe what did you learn along the way?
Not to be afraid to ask for help.
Oh, that's good.
That because the night I went into labor, he was gone, and so my mother was there. She had gotten there the day before. She had never driven our van. We had a great big van, and she was going to take me to the hospital, and we were going to call the neighbor to come over and stay with the other two children. And Lynn began to cry. She was 8, and she's, I don't want you to leave, and I don't want to stay with the neighbors, so I want Mama here. So the neighbor took me to the hospital, and she was scared all the way that I was going to have the babies in the car. She was just talking. So anyway, I don't know what I would have done without all my neighbors there to help. And my mother-in-law came, and my mother, my mother-in-law came later. And of course, she just handled the twins like it was nothing, because after having 8
children.
Yeah,
she could carry one under each arm. And she made everything
was a
look
pro.
easy. She was very.
That's really
wonderful.
good what you said, though, not being afraid to ask for help, because I think that is a key. And I think a lot of people in general, and I think moms specifically, I think because right now, moms are having kids in a culture where everyone projects this image of my perfect children on social media, and you feel bad if you need help, and you shouldn't feel bad because we are actually designed to need help. We're not designed to be able to do this alone. So I really appreciate you sharing that. And I think maybe later we can talk about some specific ways people need help, but that's good. Thanks for sharing that. But you, some things you learned along the way. How did you grow?
Well, we, for my generation, Dr. Dobson was the authority on everything. So just going to a trusted source, especially now, there's so much goofiness on the internet.
Tell us how you really feel. I agree.
Well, there is.
So true.
Because everybody's got an opinion, but that might not be the right opinion for your child or for you and your family. And we did a lot of Bible studies on mothering in our Tuesday morning Bible study group, and just not being able to admit, I don't know what to do. I need help in dealing with this. And you might get 10 different pieces of advice, and then you just pray about it, as Gail said, and do what is best for your child. And it might not look like what anybody else is doing, but your child, and you need to do what's best for them.
So what would you say was the most challenging thing, or the most challenging things? And this is, any stage of parenting, being a mom. It's the most challenging.
God, that's a toughie, because there's a lot of
teen
challenges.
There's a lot of challenge. The teen years.
The teen
How
years.
so?
Um,
Because I have a new teenager. He's our first is a teenager. So we have our oldest is now 13, and I would say that I agree in some ways. It's becoming
We're not
challenging.
there yet, so scare me.
we had a little trouble with the friends that our twins chose, that was. I think we didn't have that problem with the 2 older ones. I don't know why, but that's second one stayed.
Because you were so tired. It's like, whatever.
Yeah.
We've always thought sports were one of the most important things to keep them involved in, and one of them didn't want to do the sports, wanted to join. Just had some friends that we didn't care for, so that was a big challenge.
Yeah. So how do you navigate that when you're, because it's hard and you're not going to be on the same page at all times with your teenager.
Yes, and
so how did you navigate that challenge?
lots of prayer, and lots of talking to them and trying to make them understand that that's not the right decision. And
It is hard because
they want to make their own decisions. So.
But also we want our children to be friends with a lot of different people. If our children just stay friends with Christian kids and that's all, then they might miss opportunities to witness, but then you don't want your kids to get with the wrong crowd that could drag them down. So it's really a balance. I think one thing though is like making your home kid central, making your home very kid friendly. Like you want your house to be the place where all the kids go, because then you can see and you can know. And that's not always the case because your kids are going to want to go to somebody else's house, of course, because your house isn't cool or fun or anything. But
they've got cooler toys.
Exactly. but then also knowing who your kids' friends are, know their parents, know as much as you can, because you're not going to know everything. I mean, my kids are 29 and 32, and I hear stories now of stuff that I think it's like, please don't tell me
that you did that.
It's not anything bad. They didn't do anything bad. You didn't do anything illegal. But it's just like, I just don't want.
And Kay, I know it must have been heartbreaking that David started hanging out with Sean Walker.
Oh my
How
stars!
did you handle that? I mean, correct.
Lots of prayer. Lots of prayer. Yeah.
Influence.
I tell you what. A lot of prayer.
That's funny.
A lot of prayer.
Well, so kind of there, and this is one thing, especially as the kids have more opinions, I think it brings out now the parents generally pretty much agree on most stuff about parenting, but then the kid has an opinion, and that's really going to bring out if there's any difference of opinion in the parents. And I've noticed children will try to use that for their leverage. So how did you and your husbands make sure you were on the same page? And when you weren't, what did you do?
Well,
and it's okay if you say we didn't always handle it well.
Oh, we didn't. No. Well, especially generally, at least in our case, each of our children kind of had personality traits of us, and that's usually when parents and children butt heads when you're going up against similar traits. And if we did disagree, we never disagreed in front of the children. We always, kind of give each other a look or something like that. And then we'd talk about it later. But pretty much we were on the same page. I was much more of a pushover than Roger was. He was, more of a disciplinarian than I was, because I just want everybody to get along. Be nice. No, not that. Just be nice. Just get along and be nice. Okay, just be nice. Even now, just be nice. But we pretty much were, on the same page, because our expectations were, you will do this, you won't do this. You will do this. We weren't, there weren't a lot of gray areas.
You guys had kind of talked a lot about that beforehand.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, we had, because we grew up in sort of similar, our parents had similar discipline styles, and we had talked about the good, we talked about the not so good, and we had talked about a lot of that.
I don't remember having a lot of disagreements, but we tried to pray about it when we talk about it alone, and then bring it up with the children and try to look like we had a front
united
together.
front.
Yes, united front.
And generally, if one of us was, like, if I could tend to be the one to go off on somebody, and the other one would remain calm.
Parenting has changed a lot. So you now have, you've got grandkids and you're seeing your kids as parents. So it's different for them. What would you say? If you could just say, hey, here's some advice from someone who's raised some kids. Here's what I would just encourage you to do, Mom. What would you say? Carte blanche, here you go. Here's my advice.
Go ahead.
Well, for one thing, I say get you a group. Get you a group of moms that can support you, that can love your children, that are going to be in your children's corner, in your corner, no matter what. And get you some women, some moms, or even who are not moms, who are spiritual moms to your children. There's some ladies in this church who don't have biological children, but they have a lot of spiritual children. And get them to pray in for your children. You pray for their children. I have a group of women that we've been friends for 30 years. And if one of our kids is going through something, we'll call or text each other and say, hey, I need you to pray about so-and-so. And my kids know that these women are still praying for them, even at this age.
So you're saying you're still parenting.
Oh, yeah.
Even though your kids are older.
Well, it gets harder in some sense because you can't fix it. You know, when you're 2 and something happens, when they're 2, something happens, you can try and fix it. When they're 32, you can't. And you just pray. But get that community of moms, get it. And if it's via a text group, be an in-person group, be it whatever, get that group of moms praying for your children and with you for your children.
I agree. Because when your children are at a distance, you feel like you can't be there to help them, even though they're too old for you to.
But you still want to. You want to fix it. They're your babies, no matter how old they are.
And I think their lives are so different because all of them work, and I didn't work because I really didn't have to. So I was there to.
You worked, you just didn't get paid.
You worked.
Yes. So that's the big difference. I see that I had more time. The time thing is what I think most parents are struggling with. They don't have enough time with when they are working, and then they're trying to come home and keep up with all the activities that they have going on.
Well, you know, as you say that, we this podcast is called Boggy Talk because we get in the mud and, you know, those issues that are kind of hard to wrestle with. So in the mud, what would you say as you just kind of look at this generation of parents, you know, our generation of parents and below us, are maybe some of your concerns? And then also on the other hand, what are some things that encourage you about the current generation of parents?
Okay. Why don't you take this one first?
Those.
The phones.
Technology,
By the way, I'm not checking my text. I'm looking at my questions, just so you know.
That is the thing I worry about. The children learn a lot from those, but they learn things that aren't good either. And I really do worry about how much time they'll spend on them. Even the little ones, they start so early. You see babies in the stores holding the phone. They don't know what it does, but they know their parents hold it and look at it all the time, so they want to too. And that's scary because they can get into a lot of stuff on there that they shouldn't.
Very much so.
I mean, it's one of what they can learn on it, and
it's a useful tool.
Yes, it's a useful tool, but you really have to be careful with it. That worries me with our grandkids. The ones that live in Montana, they're outdoor. They're constantly outdoors. They're hiking.
They don't have
biking.
electricity in there.
I was just thinking, if you say someone lives in Montana, I just think wide open space.
Yes, it is, and they are outside.
They ride buffalo everywhere they go.
So they don't care. They don't do much electronics at all.
Yeah.
But I'm sure they will get into it more as they are in school. They're one's in kindergarten, the other one's 3. So they don't.
Well, what other things concern y'all?
I think that the time thing, young families have so much pressure on them, on y'all now. Justin, you touched on it before about, you know, on social media, you know, the picture perfect, everything. And it's not. I mean, it's not. And I just wish young families would realize it's okay if your kid shows up mismatched to church. That's not a big deal. You don't have to have everything perfect. If, you know, just get them dressed, get them here. Don't worry about it. You know, if their hair is combed, great. That's a win. But if it's not, don't worry. You know, there's just so much pressure, especially on young moms, and that hurts my heart because we had pressure too. But it wasn't like what young families have today. But I'm incredibly encouraged by the young parents that I see at our church. I work with the K through second grade girls on Wednesday nights. And the scripture knowledge that these young girls have, it's amazing. I mean, you can tell they're not getting it just at church. They're getting it at home too. And I see young families out together. Like I saw the Elys at breakfast the other morning, and they were just enjoying being together. And that made me so happy to see them talking and interacting. And you could tell that they made that a priority to be together. So I'm very encouraged with what I see among the young families at our church, that they really are trying to show their kids what's the priority. And that being in church is really, really important, because you're setting the precedent for, you're showing your kids what the priority is. If it's not if we go to church on Sunday morning, it's we are going. It's that showing, it's setting your priorities.
Yeah, I think that's good. I think too, when your kids were coming up, we're just say it like that, but even culturally, it was still a little bit more. There was nothing else on Sundays, and Wednesday nights were kind of sacred still.
Oh, yeah, you didn't have Little League practice on Wednesday nights when our kids were coming up, because that was church night.
Yeah, and so it's different now because there's stuff all the time. There's tournaments every weekend, and so it does become this choice where you say that's not going to be who we are. So I would ask you guys to just speak to that. Like, what would you say to parents who are struggling with that? We know, like, maybe they know cerebrally, like, we know church is a priority, but we don't want our kids to miss out on all this. You're smirking. Kay's about to roll.
No, I'm not.
Coming out. Just the fingers coming out.
The finger's not coming out yet. It is a struggle. It was a struggle back when our kids, and some parents chose, like with travel ball, and I'm not saying yay or nay on that. I'm just saying for us, that was not what worked for us, because it was, it's a matter of what your priority is, and this was the priority. We're not going to miss. We're going to be here. And for some people, that worked great, and they did their kids are fine. I'm not saying anything, but I'm saying for our family, it's about what's important, and that your kids know, God's important. Jesus and God are the most important, and this is what's central. It becomes a natural thing. Not, are we going to the beach or are we going to church this morning? No, we're going to church, and but you got to make it a fun thing, not like it's a chore. Because if mom and dad are dragging, like, oh, we got to go to church this morning, well, what are the kids going to, kids are going to think the same thing. So it's, a lot of it's how you present it.
So as we talk about, goals for our kids, and I think a lot of times people think, well, my goal for my kid is that they grow up, they get a good education, they get a good job, and they're successful, which is all fine, and that can be great, but it's not ultimate. So what's ultimate as a parent who's following Jesus is that whatever our kids do in life, that they're following Jesus. So I would like for you all to share just how you, in your role as a mom specifically, nurtured that faith, and maybe some practices you had or ways that you were intentional about cultivating that faith in your kids.
Well, one thing, I'm just so grateful for the people at our church that from bed babies on really poured into my kids. I mean, the people, they still remember. Like, John Smith was David's, I think, 5th or 6th grade Sunday school teacher. And David had a paper to write when he was in seminary. And he called John because that relationship was there. He called him to interview him about some experiences he had. And there's a lady named Helen Barrett who she's since gone to be with the Lord, but she prayed for him when we had this youth, senior adult prayer partner ministry. And she prayed for him every single day and would send him cards of encouragement. The same one and Mark had one too. And so the people that poured into their lives, that prayed for them, that from Linda Waits being Mark's bed baby teacher to a friend in the neighborhood, all these people were there. And then just, every night, every morning, praying, making things a part of our lives. We never had this sit around the table, have morning devotion kind of thing. It just becomes a part of things. Praying for their friends, reading the Bible was just, it's a part of it. And they saw us do it too. And that was important for them to see. And also just remind them, just do what God wants you to do with your life. Don't worry about making a bunch of money. You just focus on doing what God wants you to do, and He'll take care of everything else.
Yes.
Yeah, it's good.
There's too much emphasis on looking looking good, thinking that you have to make money. That's not the most important thing. Teaching him that God's the most important. And
but we can't do it ourselves. I mean, you got to have that whole church family, extended family, poured into your kids. It's so important. I mean, I can't tell you how many times they would call Dennis Brown and say, "Hey, what do you think about this?" Because that relationship was there.
Right.
Yes. Yeah, I read a book several years back by Reggie Joyner called Parenting Beyond Your Capacity, and that's really the crux of that book is just what you're talking about, the faith relationship and the faith community. And I think that so many of our even church members have bought into the lie. They don't see this, that I'm on my own. And so that's really the problem with travel sports is not necessarily travel sports. I have a son who is on a travel basketball team, but it's that we begin to kind of pull away from doing life with people. And I don't think we realize it, like how isolated we've become in our parenting. And we're just humans. We're not meant to do that on our own. And unless we're just so fortunate that we don't ever go through a crisis, when that crisis comes, we're not equipped. We're not prepared because we haven't been pressing in. And I think that's what often draws people back to that community, is those times of crisis. But sometimes it's too late. It's too late for the marriage. It's too late for the kids. And so I just think hearing you guys talk about how much that has played a part in your parenting, is encouraging. And hopefully eye-opening maybe to some who are struggling out there.
And that's where we as a church and a community, we have to be open to these young families and be available for them and provide things for them, be it a Bible study on Wednesday night on parenting, be it, a Bible study during the week for young moms to come and get support or just be there. We have to do that.
And we actually had a conversation yesterday as a staff about how we can be more intentionally multi-generational as we're growing and, in groups or life. We naturally gravitate in life groups towards people in our own age and stage, but how do we help the cross-pollinate and I don't know what the right word is, but cross whatever the word is. Intergenerational. Yes, there you go. That's better than pollinate.
Yeah. Well, it's allergies. It's allergy season.
That's right.
It's allergies.
But that's a great call. See how the pollen's everywhere? That's how our generation
What it's supposed to be.
Sermon illustration.
There you go.
Right.
That's right.
We're not supposed to be isolated, and we have to be intentional about this. And I think it's younger families intentionally seeking out those relationships, but I think also we desperately need as a church people who are, I would say older, who are seasoned, who are experienced to seek that out too, to say, hey, we're here, we're available, and we're not just going to wait we're going to go seek out where we can do this. And I think that will help us as a church be more healthy.
Right.
It will help encourage families in that journey. So you mentioned this before, just even as your kids get older, they still have issues. They still have stuff they're dealing with, and I think a lot of times, especially moms, because just maybe it's because God's naturally wired you a little more compassionately than the dad. Sometimes, not always, but moms, I think often, and I think our generation of moms do this probably even more so than maybe your generation of moms, try to fix things for their kids rather than letting their kid, like empowering their kids to fix things. So you can just share a little bit about that. How do you help, as your kids got older, how did you help them navigate hard things, hard decisions, and knowing you want to fix things, but you can't? How do you do that? Because I think that's where, we see this, parents will intervene for their kids in a heartbeat in school. And my default's like, hey, buddy, you're going to have that conversation with your teacher. I'm not. And, but if you don't have that conversation, there's going to be consequences. So you're going to do it. That's, in my home, that's how I handled it. But I would like for y'all to speak on that a little bit.
I'll let you go on this.
Go, Gail. Great.
This makes me think something I saw on the phone about a gentleman who said that he had to go in for the parent conference, and when he went in, the teacher said that your child is not doing well. We're going to have to move him into a class where he can get more help. He's not doing well on his homework at all. And the parents said, when we got home, he kept thinking about it. He said, I'm the one doing the homework.
That's funny.
So wow. Made him realize he was making some big mistakes. Well, you can't fix everything for them. No matter how hard you try, you do have to let them try to work through it. Just keep praying for them, praying with them, asking them to talk to you about it. Have these conversations. Don't just let them keep sulking about it, or just go ahead and make their decision without prayer and without talk. I think conversation.
That's good. Conversation. That's good. I think a lot of times as parents are telling their kids, you do this, rather than saying, like, that back and forth conversation of talking through it. That's good.
Find out some surprising things when you really listen to them.
Oh, that's good.
And it's hard because especially when they're younger. My generation, we were the helicopter. First started the helicopter generation because we wanted everything perfect for our kids, and we did. But that listening, it is. I look back, and that's one thing I wish I had listened more. I wish I had talked less and listened more. And done things to cultivate that conversation with them, because it is hard. But they're going to mess up, but they need to learn. We all mess up. And maybe share with your kids. It's very hard to share with your kids times when you've messed up. But share with them and let them know, I'm not perfect, and I mess up too.
Yeah, no worries.
And you just learn from it and you go on.
Well, and I think that's important, because what you're doing is you're telling your kids it's okay if you mess up. I mean, we don't want to continue messing up, but that helps model, God's unconditional love for us. Yeah. And I think a lot of kids, and I think, I have to be careful in how I parent in this. It's like, we want to have high expectations of our kids, but when they don't do that, don't meet what we think they should, like, we can't just be so hard and heavy all the time. Like, we've got to be compassionate, and Jesus is the model for that. I mean, he's a shepherd. He's tender towards us. He's loving towards us. We have to give our kids that freedom to know that when they mess up, we want our kids, when they mess up, to come to us and tell us they've messed up, rather than try to hide it from us. That's what God wants from us. When we fall short, He wants us to come and confess. And I want that for my kids, and I don't know that I do that super well all the time, and so that's really good, helping them have that freedom.
Well, and sometimes too, as parents, we'll say something, and maybe they're not hearing it the way we mean it, and so that's where that communication does come in, because there's a lot of times I've said something and my kids hear it completely different than what I meant, and it's like, oh, I didn't mean it that way, but it comes across as maybe being critical, or telling them and like, I didn't mean it that way. But especially with adult children, you have to be real careful, because you don't want to make them feel that they're not doing things well. I mean, I have the most amazing kids, and they're doing a great job with life, and I don't want to come across as being critical, but sometimes I'm afraid my words might. So
I watched a documentary on Netflix last night. Well, I always fall asleep in anything I watch, so I watched 20 minutes of it. But about the college admissions scandal, it's so crazy. It's antithetical to what you're saying. It's like they're just trying to force, their children to be whatever it may be. And the reality is, at some point, you're not going to be there.
Right.
Yep.
And I think the more you prop them up, like without. Because you're talking about a role where you're more advising, guiding, helping them listen to the Lord. I think the more you prop them up and don't let them learn from their mistakes, the severity is going to increase when they actually do fall. And I love what you're saying. But also, I think I don't know if you remember Jason Dukes, when he was here about 2 months ago, he was sharing that the reason the world doesn't see that they need the gospel is because we're not showing them how we need the gospel. And I think what you're saying is great, because I think sometimes our children don't see why they need the gospel because we don't show them why we need the gospel. And I think by having those conversations, by being open about what God's doing in our life, our kids see us as people who are dependent on his grace, and then they'll depend on his grace as well. So I think that's encouraging.
Agreed. I think too, it's like you want to parent with the end in mind, and I think when your kids are grown, what do you want? What kind of relationship do you want? You want a relationship where they're going to ask your advice.
Right.
You're gonna want them to want to spend time with you.
Yeah.
And I think it's like, but that doesn't happen overnight. I think a lot of parents, like now parenting young kids, are like, well, I just want to be their friend. They don't need you to be their friend right now.
No,
they need you to be their authority, so that one day you will have this friendship in adulthood with your kids. And that's hard because you want that now, and but you also have to cultivate that along the way. So with that in mind, I would love, now that you're on this side of parenting and your kids are grown, if you could go back and redo it, and you said this about listening a little more, what are some things you would say, if I did it over, I would do this differently? Nothing. I was great.
Yeah.
My kids wouldn't even say do anything differently, right?
I would listen more, and I would react less.
Ooh, that's good.
I would really try and look at my kids and figure out who they were and their tendencies. One of my children was very shy, and I didn't really realize how shy he was until he was an adult. And if I had really thought about that and tried to figure that out, I could have made things so much easier. Could have equipped him maybe a little bit better. So yeah, listen more. And there's sometimes though when it's just like, no, you I'm not listening to you. Just do it. Just do what I say.
Now is the time.
Because I said so. Yeah,
I have a son, if the house was on fire, he'd be like, but wait, if the way you're saying it is how we should do it. I'm like, just go, just get out of the house.
I have lived that life. Yes. Yes.
What you really should do, Dad, right now.
This is
Justin knows which kid I'm talking about. Don't say his name. Don't say his name.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm not saying any names either. But yeah, I think I really would try and just listen more and not worry about the periphery, not worry about what other people thought, not worry about performance, not worry about anything, just focus on their needs. And we tried. I'm not like I neglected my kids or anything like that, but I really, but you're tired when you're a mom.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like you're really just, you're trying to get through the day and keep everybody alive and fed and
to bed,
and not dead. To get to bed. Just get to bed.
Time has come.
For wives whose husbands are, when moms whose husbands are TDY or they're deployed, you don't have time. So then I think we shouldn't beat ourselves up because we do the best we can with what we've got. And as long as we're praying, God's going to take up the slack, because that's one thing I prayed. Lord, where I mess up, could you please just come in and take up the slack and fix what I messed up?
Right.
And he will, because he's the perfect parent, and he will do that.
That's good.
And he loves our children more than we do, and he knows our hearts. And so, and he shows us a lot of grace. And as long as Gail says, as long as we're praying and seeking Him, God's going to take care of the rest. But I did get some good advice from a friend one time. She said she prays that God will cause her children to forget all the mistakes she made.
I love it.
I like that. I think I'm going to pray that too. I like that.
Let's pray that now, right?
I like that.
Yes, not to react so quickly. It's hard not to.
That's
react.
hard because you're tired.
Yes, absolutely.
So what about you, Gail? Been married 55 years. How old's your oldest?
He's 52.
52. So you got married when you were like 7 years old, basically.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yes.
because you don't even actually look older than
Right,
55.
right.
So
But if you went back 52 years, what would you tell yourself
Wow.
to do differently?
Patience. Just have to have patience. I think. And like you say, you're tired. You lack patience. The more tired you get, the more frazzled you are, the more things you have on your mind that need to be accomplished, and you kind of you forget that children are the most important. They should be at the top of the list, not all that other stuff that you're thinking, I need to do this. Yes, absolutely. Just have the patience to put them number one and pray about them and pray with them and pray.
I think C.S. Lewis did a quote. This is a loose paraphrase of children are not an interruption. They are the most important word. My son has that on a coffee mug, and I really like that. But I look at how my son and daughter-in-law interact with their kids, and they listen, and they really get down and they explain things, and I think they're just doing it right.
It's awesome.
They really are. They're so focused, and I really admire that in them.
yeah, and focus is hard. Right,
Focus
I
is
think
very hard.
we're a distracted people all the time. There's constant noise around us, and we're just a distracted people. And so that in and of itself takes a lot of intentionality.
Well, I want to say, as we start to wrap up, the reason we asked both of you is because based on what I see in your life and hear you and your husbands talk, I think you guys are great examples.
Thank you.
I think
We actually administered a test to grown children of parents in our church.
Yes, that's right.
You guys scored the highest.
Scored the highest.
Just kidding.
I don't know about that. My kids might say something different.
Just kidding.
David was always a good test taker. That's why. But really,
Yes.
just thank you for your faithfulness, and I just encourage our moms out there to, whether it's Kay or Gail, and I know if you saw them and you had issues you're facing, they would be open to talking with you. But there are many other women in our church who would love to be there for you and help you, and it could be formal or it could be just like, hey, when there's something going on, reach out to these women. But and same for guys, as well. I think that we all who are in that season of life need people who've been there, done that, have some bruises to teach us. And so thank you so much for being here today.
Thank y'all for having us.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining us. And we thank you for listening and watching, being a part of Boggy Talk. We hope you'll join us next week as we kick off a new series talking about issues facing Generation Z. So if you don't know what Generation Z is, hey, tune in next week. We're going to explain it perfectly. And but it's going to be a great few weeks talking through issues facing Generation Z. We hope you'll join us. As always, we encourage you to hit the subscribe button so you don't miss new content as it's coming out. Thanks for joining us, and we hope you'll tune in next time.
Thanks for listening to Boggy Talk. We are so glad you joined in the conversation. Go ahead and subscribe so you don't miss a beat.